I am great, Brett. Yourself?
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm very good. It's actually a very warm day. The warmest it's been for 70 years here in the UK. So we're
Really?
yeah, apparently around about 27 Celsius, which yeah, just a couple of weeks ago it was snowing here. So yeah,
Oh my God,
it's pretty
that's
warm.
that's rather nice.
Yeah, and how are things in Seattle, your neck of the woods?
In Seattle, it's well, we've actually got it good compared to other parts of North America where it's rather chilly indeed. It is I'd say a balmy. Let's see. Oh, it's probably around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so a good 10 degrees centigrade.
Okay, but you're very early in the morning, so you got time yet.
It's early in the morning for me. It's 8 a.m. It's yeah, it's we're fine, and I'm indoors, so I don't really care what the weather is.
Absolutely. So it never rains in the bar, as they say. Um, Mike, we met quite some time ago now. In fact, I saw on Facebook it was we have our 10th anniversary of when we became Facebook friends, but I believe we met back in 2007 at Microsoft Tech Ed in Orlando, and you were very kind to put me up on the stage with the largest audience I've ever spoken to, to
Well,
which was nerve-wracking, but also
yes, I
very kind.
did, but you did great.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And that was the start of yeah, Lightning Tools and one of the products that we launched, which was back then called BDC MetaMan. And I guess that is somewhat related to your talk today, which is not going to be on BDC or BCS at all, but on citizen development and building solutions. So over to you, Mike, on that one.
Well, thanks. Yes, let's go ahead and move to this slide. Yes, this is just the intro slide. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Fitzmaurice. If you'd like to get in touch with me, Mike Fitz at MikeFitz.com, or reach me on Twitter at Mike Fitz. I've been talking about citizen development in one capacity or another for a very, very, very long time. What I'd like to do is Brett and I are going to have a bit of a conversation. I think it'll be fun. We'll talk about the citizen development and why it's inevitable, why it's actually a good thing, what is and isn't citizen development, a whole bunch of stuff. This hopefully will be a lively conversation that should last approximately 1 hour. So, Brett,
A lively
how
conversation,
about
apart from it's the first thing in the morning for you and towards the end of the day for me.
well, how about we get started with this one?
Yeah, so what are citizen developers? Tell us about that.
Well, this is an interesting question. I'm not sure it's the right question, but it's a fine question to begin with. Uh, I have heard people refer to citizen developers as people doing development work without formal training. I don't know if I like this. You see, I'll tell you where the term comes from. It comes from Gartner, the analyst group. They're clever guys, and they referred to the rise of the citizen developer as, well, the term actually comes from citizen soldier, which is a historical term. It's been around for some time. I mean, it goes back to the Roman Empire. Modern, Napoleon was actually quite proud of every French citizen being a citizen soldier and able to take up arms to defend the realm and so on. But I'd say one of the best modern day examples would be Switzerland. Most adults spend some time in a relatively short time, but a definite time in military service. They're issued guns during that time. They're trained on how to use them, and they take them home. And the Swiss Army, jokes about knives aside, is not massive, but every citizen knows how to take part in it when they need to. So the idea of a professional soldier still exists, obviously, and most countries work this way, but the citizen soldier is either in lieu of or to in addition to professional soldiers. So just about anyone who is a citizen can join in and do soldiery things, take up arms and defend the realm. Well, a citizen developer is if the term is applied correctly, it's somebody who is not on a day-to-day basis a developer, but can do some development work from time to time when the situation requires it. And excuse me just a second. I think you're seeing the wrong there we go.
Yeah, that's better.
Sorry about that. I actually think the better way to think about the problem is, or the situation is this question, which is, what is citizen development? Because at one point or another, everyone does, well, many people do citizen development. I would say that citizen development is anything you build that's secondary to your real job. And what I mean by this is, Brett, you'll occasionally write scripts or you'll occasionally build dashboards and so on, but your job is to run a company. You're not a developer, right?
Absolutely right. And I think for me, the first time I really saw this in my career was maybe back to Microsoft Access days, where
Sure.
all of a sudden there was a tool where you could build applications. It was something where people in their day jobs would actually be building solutions to do their job, and it was something that was taken away from, well, not taken away from IT, but was not controlled by IT as it was.
Yeah. And yes, all of those things are true, and a lot of the time people will focus on low-code, no-code tools, or people will focus on who it is that's doing the work and so on. I don't think that's the important thing. I think the important thing is, much like a citizen soldier is not a full-time soldier, a citizen developer is not a full-time developer, but they possess a certain degree of basic skills so that when they need to, they can go ahead and scratch an itch or address a local problem or something to that effect. Once upon a time, someone with your job didn't type. You had someone doing that for you. Once upon a time, if you needed to set up a conference call amongst multiple people, you had someone do that for you. There were specialists for it. Even budgeting used to be the realm of specialists at one point. Well, now everybody does all of that stuff. And to a certain extent, a little bit of development skills, especially if you look at younger workers, they possess at least a little bit of ability to get some things done by themselves without having to ask somebody for help to build an application or a solution of some sort.
So who can become a citizen developer then?
Just about anyone. Anyone can be a citizen developer. In fact, this is the part that I find kind of handy. Even professional developers sometimes do citizen development. If you are creating build scripts of some sort, or anything that we all know, I think, one or two developers who will spend 30 minutes figuring out a way to automate a repetitive task that would otherwise take 5 minutes.
Yep, absolutely right.
When you do that, you're a citizen developer. You're probably not, whatever that effort was, it's probably not a formal development effort. You're probably not checking that code into a source code repository. You might, but you're probably not going to put it through a build, test, production, deployment cycle or anything like that. You're going to do some iterative work on it. And in fact, you'll probably tweak it constantly over a multi-day, multi-week period until it's exactly what you want, and you'll evolve it over time. When you're doing that, you're a citizen developer. Citizen development can involve code if you've got coding skills. Doesn't have to. But citizen development is essentially non-professional development being done by people who have a job doing something else. Anyone, in theory at least, can be a citizen developer under the right circumstances.
So under the right circumstances, if we take SharePoint Designer as an example, we saw a tool that came out of Microsoft Front Page, originally used to build little websites and so on, and it was great for that. It was very visual, and it became SharePoint Designer, and we could customize the different SharePoint environments. But did that backfire? Because at some point the design experience was taken away, which actually made it more, you can only use this tool if you write code.
Right. Yeah, and make no mistake, not all citizen development is the same. There are good ways to do citizen development. There are bad ways to do citizen development. There are tools that are great for citizen development, and there are tools that out and out suck. Excuse my French.
You said that in the same sentence as we talked about SharePoint Designer, but I'll ignore that.
Yeah, no, I'm not disparaging SharePoint Designer. It was actually quite a useful tool for certain things. It is becoming less and less useful with every passing day. But that said, some people got some work done with it. Early on, SharePoint Designer was the bane of every IT person's existence, to the point where Microsoft had to allow for a setting to be applied that would block its use. Just because the way it worked wound up having pretty severe effects on performance. So in later incarnations, they got past that problem. But that said, it's still, yeah, I don't want to use that as an example. I don't necessarily want to use Access as an example, or Power Apps or anything like that. I'm not talking about any one tool, at least not right this second. I just want to say that under the right circumstances, anyone can be a citizen developer. Now, you haven't asked me this question, but you should ask me this question, which is it the same thing as low code, no code? And the answer to that is no, it is not the same thing as low code, no code. They are two different things that often get intertwined. How can I best put this? Low code, no code focuses on the tool, not the business problem and the person doing it. I would say that most citizen development involves low code, no code tools. But citizen development is a function of what the task is and who's doing it and why. Low code, no code is the type of tools you choose to use. I know professional developers that use low code, no code tools all the time because they can get more done in less time. But as they get more done in less time, they're still putting things through formal packaging and deployment cycles. They're still doing version control code style as opposed to document style. We're still doing they still have to think like developers, even if they don't have to code like developers, which is why if I hear someone say low code, no code and think that magically fits a citizen development paradigm, I get very, very suspicious that the person saying that gets it.
And I think you're probably going to touch on this a little bit later, but the role of the developer who's actually writing the code, that's building the tools, if you like, is allowing these citizen developers to produce solutions with low code or no code, and that's also not referring to a specific technology, from either Lightning tools or even from Microsoft. But it seems to be a trend now that we can develop things with functions, but those functions have code behind the scenes that users are taking advantage of to develop a solution.
Yeah, I will definitely be talking about that. And yes, I don't want to pick on SharePoint designers, which is why I was trying to move the conversation away from that. But let's not move the conversation away from SharePoint. I like SharePoint. You like SharePoint. Lightning Tools is a SharePoint extensibility company. And in fact, some Lightning tools, I would say, are perfect for citizen development. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this webinar. But so I want to be really specific about this. I want to say that it is not about the tools you're using. It's about why you are using them and who's using them and when and under what circumstances. Realistically speaking, you could do citizen development with actual code, but I think it's just this side of crazy unless you actually are a coder and this is a side project. In which case, yeah, you code all the time, or you're a system administrator and you're doing scripts in PowerShell to automate something that would otherwise be unpleasant. You're doing citizen development at that moment, and yes, I call PowerShell code. But yes, by and large, I would say 80% of the time, 90% of the time, a citizen developer will use low-code, no-code tools.
So you're basically hacking a scenario.
It's only hacking if you do a bad job of it. It's only hacking if you're trying to modify the stable behavior of something that has been painstakingly created to be stable. So how about this? If a citizen developer attempts to create server-side code in SharePoint, yes, they're hacking. That stuff is delicate and only professionals should attempt it. I'm not even sure I like the idea of citizen developers doing sandbox solutions. But the point is, hacking is trying to make something do something it wasn't designed to do. Hacking, again, we can talk about white hat and black hat hacking, for a long time, but I don't want to do that. What I would say in this particular context, if you are hacking, you're probably destabilizing. You're probably trying to modify the behavior of something that is a known quantity. You drive IT crazy when you do it. However, if you're using platforms and tools that are well suited to being extended, for example, that's not hacking at all. In fact, again, if you embrace citizen development, you're using platforms that work with it nicely. You're using tools that are non-destructive, and it's not going to be hacking at all.
So you're allowing for customization, basically.
It could be more than that. Okay, this is. I don't know where to go with this, Brett, because customization means too many different things to too many different people. I would say customization is aggressive manipulation of available settings. So when you build a dashboard, well, that might just, if you're arranging the pieces of a web part page in a SharePoint site, and deciding what theme it's going to be and placing web parts on there. At that point, that might just be customization and configuration. But if you're building a web part or you're connecting to an external data source and connecting web parts and putting them together to create an entire solution, or creating custom lists and forms for them and so on, we've just traversed the chasm and we're not in customization land anymore. So you could start out just planning to customize something, but then you start extending. And at that point, I don't want to call that customization anymore. Now, there are some people that think that customization, anything not involving code is customization. I don't agree with that. And there are some companies that refer to almost every bit of code that's been added to SharePoint or used within SharePoint as customization. Rencor, for example, they've got some very nice tools that analyze and convert and do any of a number of things, but they refer to all of those assets as customizations. I am not the vocabulary police. So
Yeah.
you can call whatever you want, whatever you want. For me, if you're adjusting what's already there or working from available choices and so on, at that point you're customizing, and the moment you add new things to it, you're extending it.
So my understanding from what you've said is that really we've got vendors that are providing tools or software that allow solutions to be built by using no code or low code is pretty much it. So we're providing building blocks. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing I'd like to get at, actually, we're going to talk about what citizen development looks like in just a second. But what I want to focus on is, because I have encountered people who have the responsibility to deal with collaboration tools or manage SharePoint for very large organizations, who are scared to death about allowing people to develop their own stuff. That they think, oh my God, a whole bunch of random access databases everywhere, or crazy spreadsheets, or rogue sites, or things along those lines. I get the fear, but this stuff is inevitable, Brett. Citizen development is going to happen whether you want it to or not.
But in some way, it's got to be governed to a certain extent, I would say, because...
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about governing it in a few minutes. But absolutely, in case someone thinks that they can prevent it, I just want to quickly make the case as to why citizen development is going on. It's not just something people do because hackers got a hack or something like that. There is something called an app gap, and I think there's been an app gap ever since there have been apps. Apps of what people want is always greater than what IT or developers either employed by or contracted by IT are able to provide. And there is a business buzzword term called the long tail that I actually think in this particular case is somewhat useful. And because not everyone has heard of it, allow me to illustrate. There is something, along the bottom axis, the x-axis, there are products. And for the moment, don't think about applications. Think about a store, for example, that sells products. Well, not every product is equally popular. You've got some products that are, this product, for example, everyone wants to buy it all the time, but you might have some esoteric product over on the right that only a couple of people are interested in. And if a store sells a lot of products, they'll span the entire range. Now, the thing about this is if we have enough products, this stops looking like a bar chart and a whole lot more like a curve. And the reason they call it the long tail is off to the right is essentially the long tail of smaller solutions that have limited audiences, but they all add up. This line, this dotted line right here, essentially everything to the left of that line and everything to the right of that line, it's the same area under the curve. So essentially about half of your work is going to involve high profile stuff that appeals to a lot of people or affects a lot of people. And the other half would be things that only a few people at a time are interested in. And if you think about a company like Amazon, one of the reasons they are so successful, convenience and a whole bunch of other things aside, is that they stock a whole bunch of stuff. Certainly they have the stuff on the left side of that dotted line, but they have an amazing amount of stuff on the right-hand side of that dotted line, and they're able to make all of it available. In fact, it's being able to address the long tail, a large number of things with a relatively small scope, but they all add up. This is why we have citizen development. IT, well, actually, yeah, let's finish this off, because it's not really talking about products, obviously. We're talking about projects, and we're talking about lots and lots and lots of them. The stuff on the right, IT is never going to get to. If you ask IT to manage and govern all available development, they're never going to have time for the stuff on the right. They, and rightly so, are going to focus all of their energy on projects that affect the majority of the company and require a lot of specialized skills and will take some time and so on and so forth. In fact, I want them to do that. If they aren't doing that, they aren't doing their job. But there's a lot of stuff being left on the table over on the right-hand side. We need to address those long tail things because, again, that's half of the need going on out there. But no one project would be cost justifiable by the professionals. That's why. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if we've got, I guess one of the reasons for that is going to be limited resources, which is why projects are never being completed.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the other option? I mean, I guess.
This is the part that's fun, and it definitely changed about 10 years ago in response as we started to recover from the global economic crisis. Nowadays, it's the lines of business that control budgets. So that stuff over on the right of the curve, those are needs that usually exist out in lines of business. I mean, yes, they might still control some of the budget. IT might have some of the budget, but so much of what you would think of as the IT budget is not owned by IT anymore. Lines of business owns it.
Yep. So
lines of business have different priorities. But in fact, I actually love this because it forces lines of business or people out there to care about the cost side of the equation, not just the benefit side of the equation. So everything they ask for has a cost associated with it, and it comes out of their budget now.
But that's changing as well.
So they get to start making interesting questions and interesting trade-offs.
The model's changing there as well, right? So we're not looking at necessarily having to have large budgets for software acquisitions, such as buying things perpetually, but the model of buying software has changed to more of a software as a service.
Software as a service. Software as a service has actually made things much, much, much easier, especially when a line of business controls the budget. Because what's going to be really attractive to them now is the ability to get out a credit card or get out a purchase order and have within a few moments collaboration workspaces using Office 365 or everything else offered by Office 365. Or if they need to do Salesforce automation, that's the old style user interface, but actually some customers are still using it. This is Salesforce.com. Microsoft Dynamics is also a possibility, but if you're trying to manage data on a lot of customer relationships, it's really, really good for that. How about marketing automation and doing campaigns? Marketo is a fine software as a service offering for this. You don't deploy it, you don't install it, you just use it. It's available in the cloud. ServiceNow for IT operations and trouble tickets and so on. And Concur for expenses, travel and expense management and so on. These are all out of the box available software as a service solutions. And they're quite nice, they're quite available, and they can be had almost immediately. Now, all of them probably aren't exactly what you want, and some of your activities or solutions might involve bridging the gaps between them, which is why it's not just about software as a service, it's about tools as a service. And Lightning Tools has some things, Skybo has some things, Nintex has some things, K2 has some things. There are a wide number of companies, and obviously Power Apps, Flow, Power BI. There are a lot of options out there that are tools that are essentially provided as a service. The tools might live in the cloud. The tools might be quickly downloadable and frequently updated. The point is that software as a service, well, it might do everything you want, but it might also provide APIs that allow it to participate in a larger solution, especially one that spans boundaries. Those conditions have basically said it's now easier than ever. Whoops, let's try this again. And if I have to, that's really, really strange. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, we have the slide back. So rise of the APIs. Software is now easier than ever to integrate. You don't need to have elaborate service buses that only a handful of people know how to use. You don't need BizTalk anymore, at least not for connecting applications together. Applications want to be connected. In fact, Amazon, I think, led the way in this respect, where I think it was about 10 years now, maybe longer, that Jeff Bezos told every division within Amazon that if you've got a website, you need to make that a service with an API in front of it, and then your app can use that API. But everything needs to be available as a callable set of web services, and if you don't do this in 6 months, you're going to lose your job. Everybody responded. And as a result, they had a pluggable infrastructure where software could work with each other, at least in ways that no one thought of, at least at the beginning. By building this infrastructure, that later became something they could sell to other people, and that's how Amazon Web Services got formed. So software now wants to be integrated. Tools are available for doing that, and services are designed to be integratable. What used to be a daunting task, because a lot of things that users will ask for involve extending out of the box stuff beyond what it was originally designed to do. Well, the tools are easier and easier to get and easier to use. The APIs are there, so you don't need an esoteric service bus. And the services are designed to be used as building blocks. It's a perfect storm of conditions that says, look, everybody can get their hands dirty now as long as they possess at least a certain number of skills. Maybe not a casual user, but certainly somebody working in sales ops or marketing operations or so on. There's always one or two skilled people in every group that possess this, even if they're not formal developers. Well, the APIs are there, the services are there with the APIs, and the tools are there. Citizen development is going to happen to address the app gap. We have the capacity is easier and the need is greater. So how about we talk about what's different about citizen development, what makes it different from professional development, or what some people would call real development. There are a lot of things, because if I were a professional developer and I were grading citizen development projects, I'd probably go crazy. But if I were thinking about the big picture, look, we need to address the app gap. We need to address that long tail. And one of the first things you need to accept is that citizen development is imperfect. Very, very, very imperfect. And that's going to be okay because the needs are different. Give you a perfect example of this. Brett, do you like architecture by any chance?
I do like architecture, yeah.
Okay, well, have you ever seen pictures of, or maybe in your travels to the United States, if you've been near Pittsburgh, maybe you went and checked this place out?
I have not seen it, but I know it's designed by one of my wife's favorite architects. So Frank Lloyd.
Yeah, this is a Frank Lloyd Wright house. It actually has a name. It's called Falling Water. It was built for the Carnegie family a long, long time ago. And one of the things that's fascinating about the house is that it's actually built on a waterfall. The waterfall goes through the house. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. Now, I love this kind of stuff. And if I wanted to, if I wanted a copy of this, if I wanted, a facsimile of this of my own, I could go out and get a kit that looks something like this. Sorry, I couldn't find a higher resolution photo, but this is an architectural mock-up of the falling water house. And it's done. It's a very, very nice job. Now, if my job was to create a miniature version of this, because I wanted something to put on a table or put on a shelf or put on my desk or something to that effect, so that if you walk into my office, you go, hey, you're into great design and great architecture and so on too. Yeah, we're both cool. We have an established relationship. We like some of the same things. Let's talk some more. I want something on my desk just to help say something about me. All right. I could go ahead and do this. This will be expensive. This will take time. It'll be beautiful. But it actually might be more than I need, because if my goal is to say something about myself and give us a conversation piece or give me something to look at and think about from time to time, my needs can be met with this.
And you could build it yourself.
This is a Lego kit for building the falling water house. Now, my guess is if you walked into my office and you saw this, you would go, hey, Fitz is into architecture. Fitz likes Frank Lloyd Wright. Design matters. This is good. We've got something in common. But if you saw this, the same thing would take place. In fact, you might also go, hey, that's clever, and you even built it with Lego. My needs can be met with this. This is cheaper. This is easier. This takes less time. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect. It's just enough. I'm good with this. And one of the first things that you have to think about is, what do I actually need? You need to have a certain degree of empathy with who will use it. One of the advantages of those long-tailed projects is that if you're likely to know exactly who your users are, it's a smaller group of people that are affected by this, or a smaller group of job ranges. Professional development projects actually need to think of all kinds of elaborate use cases. They have a much tougher job because they have a much larger scope. If those applications are popular, they're greater risk for people not understanding them or not being able to use them, and user adoption is a challenge because they're likely to be pushed onto users, and fingers are crossed, and whole groups of experts have cropped up on successful user adoption. Well, usually a citizen development project, you have people chomping at the bit. You have people that are desperate for the solution. They're going to use it. They'll tolerate imperfections. This is something they need that they've been waiting for, that's not going to get done for them unless they do it for themselves. You know your users. You know how they'll use it, and you'll know which imperfections they're going to accept. This is all okay. Like I'm saying, I'm not saying it's better than professional development. I'm saying it complements professional development, and in the best of all possible worlds, you use them together. Now, another thing about citizen development is that subject matter is more important than technique. So in other words, if I build something to manage customer leads, or mailing list management, or licensing, or any of a number of things like that, it's a whole lot more important for me to understand the content I'm working with, and the data I'm working with, and the subject matter I'm working with. In fact, I don't want to obsess about software development techniques or design patterns or things like that. I want that to be handled for me. A citizen developer is not going to, even if a citizen developer has developer training, they're not going to keep ultra current in agile modeling or a whole bunch of other things. They have a sense of organizing data in a normalized way or a semi-normalized way. They have a sense of how to put a form together. They know enough, but the onus is going to be on the tools to take care of a lot of the technique and present things to users that they aren't going to hurt themselves with. The a citizen developer is going to focus a whole lot more on the what and a whole lot less on the how. The how ought to be handled for them in a repeatable, understandable, safe way. We definitely worry about citizen developers shooting themselves in the foot, the collective foot. We expect the tools to keep that from happening. And this is one where Lightning Tools comes in a big way.
Yeah, so we're assembling.
Citizen development projects are usually assembled as opposed to written. Again, there are exceptions, but more often than not, we should think of a citizen development project as using something like this. I love Lego bricks. I think you like Lego.
Yeah, I think most people know that I like Lego.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was kind of an understatement, Brett. The point is, Lego is a popular thing. Lego is a fun thing. Lego can be used to make just about anything, but ideally you've got the right kinds of bricks and the right kinds of components. But yes, the citizen development project is usually assembled as opposed to built from scratch. That's all I mean by that, and it's perfectly fine that way. That's another characteristic of how citizen development is different from professional development. Here's another one. Citizen development is usually done in place. And when I say in place, meaning, and this is going to drive professional developers crazy. If I'm going to build, I'm not going to put it through formal build, test, and production deployment cycles. I'm going to build, in fact, I'm not going to say build. I don't want to freak people out. If I'm going to assemble a solution, I'm going to assemble it where I'm going to use it. Much like if I'm writing a document, I'm going to write the document and store it where I intend for people to work with it. I might version that document just like I might update my in-place solution. There's not that much damage you can do to a site by adding a document to it or configuring it or adding new things to it. And there ought not, again, this is where using the right tools comes in. There ought not to be much damage at risk if I'm going to go ahead and modify settings on components that I'm bringing together with custom lists and custom contents in a SharePoint site, be that on premises or online or what have you. But the point is, if it's a citizen development project, I'm probably not going to package it up and send it somewhere. Now, this is not to say that at some point a citizen development project doesn't get so elaborate that it becomes a formal development project, and then we might want to put it through that kind of formality, but that's kind of a life cycle thing. We'll get to that in a few moments. If you're working on the right-hand side of that, citizen development is happening in place. Don't expect to put it through formal deployment cycles and test cycles and so on. It's going to be tested in combat. It's going to be modified constantly. It's a living thing, and the person who wrote it is going to have a deep personal relationship with it. That's just how it is. And yes, if you want to limit the scope of what can be done there, that's okay. But just expect that it'll be iterative. It's also impermanent. And when I say impermanent, I mean we're going to change it constantly. It also might not live forever. I might build a citizen development effort for a very fixed period of time. I might, for example, say you're going to go ahead and set up a booth at a conference, and you want a lead tracking solution for it, or you want to set up some sort of way for people to self-register for a contest, for a drawing, or something to that effect. You might have a solution for that. It might not live forever, and that's perfectly fine. IT will never touch that thing. It won't last long enough. But you need it, and you need it a lot, and it'll have a big impact, but only for a short period of time. It's okay for that to be a temporary solution, a disposable one. But it's also okay for you to have something that's impermanent in the sense of it starts out being a fairly simple minimum viable solution, and then we start grafting more and more stuff onto it, and it becomes it takes on a life of its own and gets more and more interesting as time goes by. This is all okay. This is normal for citizen development efforts. This is the part that I actually think is the most important, and it's what sets citizen development projects apart from professional development projects. Citizen development projects, not all of them are. In fact, this is where several tools out there absolutely fall short. But the most important thing in citizen development is that it needs to be understandable. It needs to be obvious as to what's going on, or more to the point. Let's pick a tool that I'm not fond of for citizen development, InfoPath. And it's not that I don't like what people have been able to do or that it can't do amazing things with InfoPath, but Brett, you've done some InfoPath work over the years, have you not?
I have. I think I was a pretty early adopter of the product, and yeah, you would you touched on this a moment ago, is you could achieve a lot of what you wanted to do, but you would always hit a limit. And quite often you would then have to become that professional developer, which doesn't make sense when it's meant to be a citizen development tool.
Well, it's absolutely that. But here's where I was going with this.
It's also not very understandable.
Yeah, it's hard. Okay, here's a scenario. You go ahead and you build something really clever, and by clever I mean complicated, in InfoPath. You go off on a holiday for 2 weeks. During that time, we realize that we need to make some changes to your form.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else at the organization needs to go ahead, open up your InfoPath form definition, and crawl inside your head. Are they going to have a good time?
Not at all. No,
not at all. Your head is a scary place. I say that with love, but everyone's head is a scary place. Actually, here, this one's not at all dangerous. You come back from your 2-week holiday and have to crawl back inside your own head to figure out what you did 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to have a good time?
No, probably not.
No, you're probably not. Most citizen development tools actually fall short here. They tend to still think like they're doing professional development. And in professional development, I care about efficiency. I care about memory management. I care about data management. I care about CPU cycles. Maybe not in an obvious way as I'm writing the code, but everything about the whole paradigm is focused on efficiency and performance and machine performance or application performance and so on. Citizen development is focused on people performance. I've done a lot of workflow stuff over the years. Workflow is actually a really good example of this in the sense of most workflows spend most of their time waiting for people to do something. You want to make a workflow solution performant, you figure out everything you can do to get people to respond to tasks as quickly as possible. It's got nothing to do with machine efficiency or flow of code or flow of instruction efficiency. And so it needs to be understandable as to what's going on at all times. That's problem number one. Problem number two is, and this is a legitimate concern that IT brings up from time to time, the person that wrote a citizen development solution might move on relatively soon, and it'll be someone else's job to maintain that or evolve it or something to that effect. So using tools that pretty much explain what it is they're doing, that matters a whole heck of a lot. Now, if I need to, and look, SharePoint lists are, if I'm creating a custom list for a specific kind of purpose, it ought to be obvious what's in the list. SharePoint lists are relatively self-documenting. taxonomies might be relatively self-documenting. The guts of a web part might not be self-documenting, and the guts of an InfoPath form, definitely not. The jury's out on how easy it is for you to understand a Power App or a flow I might have built. But there are tools, especially from third parties, that lend themselves more to self-documentation and clarity and ease of understanding compared to others. I don't want to endorse one thing and not endorse another or something to that effect, but I will say that if you want to do citizen development right, you got to focus on clarity.
That makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that we do as developers is, we always make our code maintainable as well. So that's obviously something.
Yeah, this is not an alien concept to professional development, but we express it a little bit differently, and we do have some trade-offs. So it's on a continuum. It's on a sliding scale. There are some in professional development land. As long as I comment the heck out of it, I might have some functions written that look insane, but perform like in an amazing and wonderful way. Again, it's my job to comment that and just have someone trust me. I probably wouldn't do that in a citizen development project. I would still focus on being understandable first and everything else second.
So when SharePoint was first launched, there was lots of conversations about, is SharePoint a development platform or is it a solution?
It used to be my job a long time ago to convince people that it was a development platform. It was both, especially when it originally shipped. It was a solution. It was an extensible solution because it had what was originally called a digital dashboard or a portal UI. The original supposition is that people would extend it by adding web parts and configuring them and putting them together into new dashboards that did new things. Over time, it became very obvious that what people wanted to do was modify sites, modify pages, create custom lists, use them together as total solutions, and web parts played a role. But no, from the very beginning, SharePoint has been a solution that that was meant to be extended and meant to be a platform. But I will say this, it started off kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It had search, it had document storage, it had custom lists, it had a configurable user interface. You could make that, the question that you asked is not an illegitimate one, but it's no longer anymore a relevant one, because you now have, especially Office 365. Office 365 is a set of integration-friendly services. Now, you get one particular packaging of all those services out of the box, but you can make anything you want. All right. SharePoint is a set of integration-friendly services. I can go ahead and most everything has an API, so it can be extended, it can be used in other solutions, it can be customized. Lots of options are available to you. The world is your oyster. Now, if you've accepted the fact that citizen development must exist, probably the biggest question here is, what should IT do about it? And the answer to that is quite a lot, actually. But the one thing that should not be done is to think or to behave like you're a cop. Because remember, lines of businesses, first of all, it's bad for morale. Second of all, it's going to force users doing citizen development efforts to go rogue and know they're going rogue and keep things from you. You actually want open lines of communication. You want to know when citizen development is taking place. Acting like the police is not going to help you. It will not win friends and influence people. So I would strongly caution not to do this. What I would, oh, by the way, remember, since lines of business own the budget, you might wind up pulling over a high-ranking government official for a speeding ticket, and you're the one who's going to get in trouble. So what I would suggest whether that's justified or not, it's going to happen. So what I would suggest is, rather than thinking like this, think like this. Be a coach. What you want to do, instead of being in the business of no, is being in the business of how. And by making sure that people have a certain degree of familiarity with which components exist out there, with what is available, with and recommended ways of working with it, you can show people what to do and how to do it, as opposed to telling people, no, don't do that, it's too dangerous. Yes, this requires different skills. Yes, this requires being outwardly savvy, but it's absolutely necessary, because, again, you can't stop citizen development. You can only stop it from being painful. In fact, be a teacher if necessary. It's probably not a bad idea. If people, in fact, I've encountered companies that essentially give people citizen development driver's licenses. You do a little bit of training in a particular citizen development platform or set of tools. Once you've done that, you're issued a driver's license. In fact, you can come back and get tutoring at any given time, but this is not a bad way to be. It's understanding that you can't build everything for people, so give people just enough knowledge to be able to do just enough things for themselves to address some of the long tail. You should also be a cheerleader, because you really want to promote this. You don't just want to promote citizen development efforts. You want to promote good citizen development efforts. You want to promote people authenticating the approved way. You want to approve people making use of data in approved ways, or making use of an API that you've made available. You want to celebrate other people's successes and show them off as examples for others. This is a very good thing. In fact, what you want to do is not just have this set of generic components that are provided by an out-of-the-box thing. You actually want some custom components that are available that allow users to do some things that are very, very specific. And Lego, in fact, understood this. When I was little, Lego bricks were Lego kits looked a lot like this, not like this. Things have changed. People want to build more interesting and sophisticated projects. Lego has risen to the task. You want to build the Batmobile? There are some standard bricks in here, but there's also a lot of very specific components. And that's okay, because you and IT can be in the business of building those specific components that are meant to be brought together and snapped together to create new solutions. They might be obvious in what they do. They might be mysterious in what they do. They might be a lot of fun in what they do. But provide a catalog of reusable stuff. Now, I bring up the SharePoint store not as a specific example of this, but as a general example of being in the business of, and this is the add-in model as opposed to other things, but this is a good idea in the sense of showing users or citizen developers a whole set of components that they can add to their sites and connect together in order to get new things done. And instead of this being a set of add-ins, this could be a set of APIs or a set of software components, a set of Azure functions, a set of workflows, a set of data sources. All of these things are possible, but you want to curate a catalog. In fact, yes, you want to be a curator. You might think of it more as a zookeeper than a curator, but that's really up to you. But you want to curate citizen development. That's actually my biggest takeaway here.
So what's the catch?
There are several. You need to focus more on assembling solutions. You need to suggest to people that if it gets the job done, it doesn't have to be pixel perfect everywhere. In fact, if you focus too much on customization, you're going to waste resources and time. In fact, achieve customization by assembly. Find the right tools. It's really easy to find the wrong tools. Again, you want clarity to be more important than everything. You want shareability to be more important than everything. You want the tool. Here's the key. You want tools that don't require a citizen developer to think like a developer. It's easy to free them from having to code like a developer. You want to free them from having to think like a developer. Looping logic and exception logic and so on. Handle that for them. Make it easy. The tools exist. They're not everywhere. It's not enough to be low code, no code. You probably need to start with this, but you're not going to finish with this. Shareability counts. If you're on vacation, I should be able to look at what you've got. In fact, if you've built something really, really nice, there ought to be a way to save it in a catalog so that I can make a copy of it, or I can just use it and benefit from it as well. You want to make that cheerleader function and that curation function. That involves making stuff shareable. Being able to monitor everything. Either this is built directly into the platform, Skyboat does a decent job of this, or it ought to be built into or there ought to be tools that work with it. Rencor is nice about this as well, their analysis cloud, being able to monitor the activity going on out there. Find the right tasks that fit citizen development well, and avoid the wrong tasks. Here's some example. Page assembly, total citizen development project. List creation, yes, that's citizen development. Power Apps in Flow, maybe. I've looked at some of the guts behind Power Apps, and I've looked at some flows and gone, what the heck is going on here? And the moment that I get that reaction, it's probably not so self-documenting anymore. It's definitely low code, no code. Not sure it's citizen development. Depends. Azure Functions, definitely not citizen development. This is something a professional will create and make available to citizen developers as Lego bricks. Totally okay. In fact, we like that paradigm. Power BI, staging the data for dashboards, not citizen development. Using the data in dashboards, citizen development. Page customization, citizen development. Well, it depends. If you're doing a lot of heavy JavaScript, maybe not. Web part creation, probably not citizen development. Depends. Taxonomies and such, probably can be citizen development. It's very geeky. It's not code geeky, but and the more I think about this, no, there are specialists devoted to information architecture. You probably want to involve them for creating taxonomies. I wouldn't suggest that an individual citizen developer scratching a niche try to create term stores and taxonomies. This is technically intense, even if it isn't code intense. But to sum it all up, amateur development can be your friend if you manage it professionally. And with that, thanks for having me for the last hour. I appreciate it, Brett.
Thank you, Fitz. I think that's definitely enlightening, and you've given me a lot to think about as well. So, no, I really appreciate that, and hopefully everybody that's been on the call has done as well. So, Mike, is it possible that people could reach out to you if they do have any questions?
Yes, absolutely. Direct message me on Twitter at Mike Fitz. Or if you want to get in touch with me over email, mikefitz@mikefitz.com.
Wonderful.
It's about as easy as I can make it.
You can't get much easier than that. Absolutely right.
Some other guy got ahead of me on Instagram. Mike Fitz on Instagram is a completely different guy.
Oh, no.
But,
okay.
I am definitely Mike Fitz on Twitter.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you again, Mike. We are also going to be launching very soon another webinar series. So that's going to be concentrating on some of our tools. And some of those are certainly citizen development tools. But we'll be looking at, first of all, our permissions management tool, which is called DeliverPoint, and also Lightning Forms, which will help you build SharePoint list forms and finally also the Lightning Conductor. So these webinars will be available shortly, so look out for the newsletter. If you're not subscribed to our newsletter, then you can do that via our website. So just go on to lightningtools.com and you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll get notified about these upcoming webinars as well. But yeah, thank you very much.
Both of the,
Sorry, go on.
and the second and third item, Lightning Forms and Lightning Conductor, totally within the realm of citizen development, people.
Absolutely right. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time over the years building the building blocks there for you to build your solutions, and it's very extensible. So absolutely right. So yeah, thank you very much, Mike. I know you've got a long day ahead of you. It's sunny here and time for the pub. So we'll end the webinar there. But thank you very much indeed. And please provide us with any feedback. You can reach me on brett@lightningtools.com. And also the webinar was recorded, so feel free to share that as well. It will be up on our website on lightningtools.com under the webcast section tonight, and also on our YouTube channel as well. So yeah, thank you very much.